Hey there fellow Legionnaires, so in this video I'm going to be looking at Chapter Approved 2019 and how the points changes affect the competitive value of the various Deathguard units. Rather than just read out all the points changes, I'm assuming in this video that you have a copy of Chapter Approved 2019 in front of you or have found the points values through some other means. A quick look over the points adjustments, we can see in summary that close combat units have been reduced across the board, which is really interesting. Myphitic Blight haulers have gone down again in points. Foetid Bloat drones have gone down in points, so now they're more competitive. And the Rhino, Predator and Landraider have all had slight reductions. So this channel is going to be dedicated to Deathguard tactics and hobbying. So if that's of interest to you, consider hitting the subscribe button. Chaos Cultists are back to their original points cost of 4 points a model. They should have never changed from 4 points a model in the first place. In Chapter Approved 2018, Games Workshop made them 5 points a model to try and get people to take Chaos Space Marines more, but that was never going to work. I never leave home without a 40-man blob of Cultists to cast Cloud of Flies on, and with the Deathguard Relentless Advance rule, they're just so good being able to shoot their autoguns at 18 inches. They always end up clearing up a lot of units. Something to note, I think back in Chapter Approved 2018, the points cost of the Heavy Stubber went down to 2 points. That's only 6 points for a Cultist with a Heavy Stubber. And with Relentless Advance, you can move and shoot heavy weapons. So on the first turn, you're going to be moving and advancing your Cultist, so no one will be able to shoot. But then in the second turn is when you'll be doing your shooting. And I think the Heavy Stubbers really open up more tactical options because you have 4 men in the 40-man blob who can shoot at 36-inch range, and they've got strength 4, so if you cast Veterans of the Long War on them, it makes them even better at wounding the opponent than if they're just armed with the auto gun, and that's only an additional 8 points to the 40-man blob. So it's nice to see a 20-point drop for Landraiders and a 5-point drop for Predators, but I think that's still outperformed by the Plagueburst Crawler, just because it is so much tougher. It's nice to see a slight points drop for Rhinos as well. I think character bombs might be a thing now, and there was an ITC list which performed really well, which had a squad of 2 squads of 5 Plague Marines, in a Rhino, and another big squad of Plague Marines in a Siege Drill. With the further points dropped to Rhinos, I'm really thinking about a Rhino character bomb list where you have a Rhino which you pop smoke on and cast Miasma of Pestilence on for a -2 to hit, because a lot of the Deathguard characters want to get close to the enemy, like the Malignant Plaguecaster and Foul Blight Spawn. I'm thinking 7 Plague Marines in a Rhino with dual knives and 2 with flails, and 2 Foul Blight Spawn and a Malignant Plaguecaster. Just as a side note, if you're like me and you take a Chaos Lord with Archer Contaminator and the relic which extends his auras by 3 inches, I normally take him with a Power Fist and a Combi Plasma, so it can contribute to the battle in terms of damage output. But if you look at the War Gear options, the CHAINFIST has actually gone down to 11 points. So for 2 points more than the Power Fist, you get -4 AP and a guaranteed 2 damage, which I think is an absolute steal, so I'll be taking my Chaos Lord with a CHAINFIST from now on. So, Chaos Spawn, whoa, this is probably one of my favourite changes of Chapter Approved 2019, because they're just so cheap. They're just so cheap now. So for 100 points, you get 5 of them, and I think they're huge competition for Plague Marines now. Because that's 100 points for 20 toughness 5 wounds. So who cares that they don't have a great save? Who cares that they don't have feel no pain? That's 20 toughness 5 wounds for 100 points. The negative of Chaos Spawn is that you're always going to be using up a command point to reroll a charge distance if you're doing a lot of assaults, which means you won't have a command point available to spend on the random number of attacks they roll. So the worst case scenario for these guys is that they only get 2 attacks a model, but that's only a 1 in 6 chance. A lot of the time they're going to be getting about 4 attacks a model. So if we look at the current meta, which is spamming 3 Plagueburst Crawlers with Plague Spitters, The one weakness of Plagueburst Crawlers is Assault. Someone can come in, tie them up in Assault. I'm thinking about units which can ignore Overwatch, like there's an Elder Relic, some sort of Howling Banshee Mask where they get to ignore Overwatch, and then there's a Blood Angel Relic where they can also ignore Overwatch. So those characters can come in and type the Plagueburst Crawler without any sort of repercussions. However, Chaos Spawn moves 7 inches, and then you can take a Noxious Blightbringer to get them to roll 2 dice for their advance, so they can keep pace with the Plagueburst Crawler, which moves 9 inches, and form a screen for the Plagueburst Crawler, basically. And also, bringing a Noxious Blightbringer is, I think, essential if you're going to be taking 15 Chaos Spawn to get a good advance roll on the first turn and just guarantee that turn 2 assault. So another negative of Chaos Spawn is that they only hit on a 4+, but again, in steps a Tallyman who can upgrade that 50% chance to hit to a whopping 75% chance to hit. And if you look at the data sheet for Chaos Spawn, they hit insanely hard. Strength 5, 2 damage attacks, -2 AP, and then who cares about the mutated beyond reason randomness? Every single one of those rolls, the Razor Claws, the Grasping Pseudopods, or the Toxic Hemorrhage, they're all going to be useful. They're all going to boost the damage of the Chaos Spawn. And then the Chaos Spawn cause a morale debuff 1 to the opponent, and the Noxious Blightbringer also causes a morale debuff. So when you start debuffing units who are susceptible to morale for -2, that's when things start to get really interesting. So Deathshroud Terminators, I've been thinking a lot about these guys recently, now that they're only 1 point more than standard Blightlord Terminators. And they're just far superior in Assault, coming with an extra attack. And they're basically armed with Plague Power Fists, which don't have a -1 to hit on them. It's just their negative is that they really suffer from their slow movement. Being an Assault unit, you want to get into the opponent's face. You want to get up close and personal. So what I'm really hoping for is a 3d6 charge stratagem to come out of Psychic Awakening for the Deathguard army, because it means you'll be able to deep strike these guys and then hopefully get a guaranteed assault off on them. So obviously Deathshroud were the go-to choice for keeping Mortarion alive, but now with the points drop for Typhus as well, the Deathshroud are really a natural fit for Typhus. They basically double Typhus's wounds characteristic, and Typhus is a big, huge damage dealer, one of the best damage dealers in Deathguard Codex. Couple that with the +1 attack the Deathshroud give Typhus as well. So on the charge, he's getting 6 attacks with his Mastercrafted Man Reaper, which is huge. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of lists which pair Typhus with the Deathshroud Bodyguard. And also, I think the Deathshroud could be quite interesting for character bomb lists. Say you've got 2 Demon Princes who are engaged in the same assault. You could deep strike the Deathshroud and get them to within 3 inches of both Demon Princes, which is not impossible. And then that's giving you an extra 2 attacks, 1 attack on each Demon Prince. So that's something to think about. So Foetid Bloat drones have taken a points dive because the Plague Probe that they're automatically armed with and you can't get rid of is now only 5 points. I could never see a point in taking them over a Plagueburst Crawler because they were more expensive, but they weren't as durable. I think now they're in competition with Plagueburst Crawlers for sure, definitely. So everyone knows and loves the Plague Spitter drone for its ability to shoot, assault, fall back, and then shoot the unit again, so it can really melt units down off the board. However, I'm going to make the case for the other options that the Foetid Bloat drone can take. So let's look at the Flesh Mower again now, because with the Flesh Mower, it's the cheapest you can get a Foetid Bloat drone to be, and it's the same, pretty much the same points cost as the Myphitic Blight Hauler used to be, but you get 10 attacks on the charge thanks to Hateful Assault. The only negative is that obviously you don't have a shooting attack, but you're only hit a 4+, which is common for like a lot of demon engines. But I think this is where the Tallyman is really going to come back into vogue, because you can upgrade those 10 attacks from hitting on a 4+, which is about 50% chance to hit, to hitting on a 4+, re-rolling all hits, which is a 75% chance to hit. So if he's in range of a Tallyman, so you could easily take 3 of these Flesh Motor drones, and if they're in range of a Tallyman, that's going to be absolutely brutal. So time for the most controversial part of the video. I'm going to be talking about the Foetid Bloat drone armed with the heavy Blight launcher. Now this is the least popular loadout for the Bloat drone. You never see anybody taking a heavy Blight launcher armed drone. However, just hear me out, with this points decrease, just looking at the data sheet for the Foetid Bloat drone, it's got 10 wounds, so it's basically a really fast, tougher predator. As it takes damage, its movement goes down, its strength goes down, its attacks go down. This all really heavily affects the Plague Spitter and Flesh Mower armed drone. However, it's one of the few vehicles that, as it takes damage, its ballistic skill is unaffected for a 10 wound model. So I think the point of the Foetid Bloat drone with the heavy Blight launcher is it's supposed to go around the sides of the board, outflank, or fly up, get in the enemy's face, get within that 12-inch aura some armies have where they're -1 to hit, like Ynnari and Ravenguard. It's fast enough to get inside that 12 inches and then be shooting things at its full ballistic skill again. Or it can outflank around the sides of the board and just kind of harass the enemy all game with 6 shots hitting on 4s. Hopefully you'll have a Lord or Demon Prince nearby to make it a bit more accurate. Hopefully you hit with 4 of those shots. But maybe if you've got 3 of these guys, they're putting out 18 shots a turn. And critically, if you have a Lord, or more likely a Demon Prince, because he can keep pace with the Foetid Bloat drones, with Arch Contaminator, you're re-rolling all the wound rolls for those heavy Blight launchers as well. So that's 18 shots, re-rolling 1s to hit, and re-rolling all wounds. That's going to do quite a lot of damage. And critically, it's turn 1 damage. Deathguard really struggle with turn 1 damage. There's a lot of the turn 1 damage comes from our vehicles, not necessarily from our troops. Apart from Plague Marines, you can take a unit 5 of 2 Blight launchers and run them up the board to try and hit something turn 1. But Foetid Bloat drones bring quite a lot of turn 1 damage. Deathguard really struggle with turn 1 damage in general, which is why people are so fond of taking the Leviathan Dreadnought, because it's straight away they're tough, and straight away it's heavy hitting turn 1 attacks reaching across the board. But I'm going to test this out. I'm going to test out 3 Bloat drones armed with heavy Blight launchers and get back to you guys about how effective they are. So the Malignant Plaguecaster has taken a huge 15-point price cut, and he's really caught my eye again because he could be turned into an absolute mortal wound dealing machine. So with the Pandemic Staff relic, he can smite. He's got +1 to his psychic test to manifest smite, which is a big deal. And then also you can give him Curse of the Leper, so he can do a huge amount of mortal wounds of Curse of the Leper. And then for his second ability, you can give him some sort of buff ability. But the idea for him is that you jump him out of a Rhino, cast Smite with Pandemic Staff, then also do Curse of the Leper, so to deal with tons of mortal wounds. But then he's got a special ability that if he rolls a 7 or more on a psychic test, a unit within 7 takes a mortal wound. So with the +1 with the Pandemic Staff, it's likely you're going to roll a 7 with Smite. But then you've also got a chance to roll another 7 with Curse of the Leper. So you could be dealing another additional 2 mortal wounds, which is huge. Okay, so Myphitic Blight Haulers. Whoa! Let's talk about them for a second. A lot of Deathguard players kept hating on my Myphitic Blight Haulers for some reason. There's a thread on Butter and Chainsword where someone was literally saying like how to make Myphitic Blight Haulers good. But in all my games against my older opponent and my other opponents, they absolutely hate Myphitic Blight Haulers, comparing them to Dark Elder Talos in terms of how good they are. Now that we've seen another points drop for Myphitic Blight Haulers, they were great before, but now they're like just like an auto include. I can't believe they've dropped again. Comparing Dreadnoughts to Myphitic Blight Haulers, just put their data sheets side by side, and Myphitic Blight Haulers just get so many bonuses over Dreadnoughts. They're more resilient. They give the cover aura. They're faster. They've got a lot of shooting options, but they're still quite good in assault. I think they've just completely replaced Dreadnoughts. This is the sort of soft replacement strategy that Games Workshop is doing. They're basically saying, oh, you can still use your old Space Marine units. You can still use your Predator and your Landraider, and your Dreadnoughts. But why? But why would you when the newer options are just so much better in the game? Remember, with a unit of Myphitic Blight Haulers, who are now so cheap, I still can't get over how cheap they are. You can still take a Chaos Sorcerer to cast Warp Time on them, so that they get a 28-inch move, so be right in the opponent's face turn 1, and also he can cast Prescience on them to enable them to hit on 2s, which is really important because they don't have a lot of shooting attacks. They don't roll many dice, so if they can hit with those powerful attacks, it's really good. And I think you could follow the Chaos Sorcerer. You want to take him with a jump pack, so he can keep pace with the Haulers, but then you can cover him with a unit of Chaos Spawn, so he doesn't just get shot off the table. So Plaguebearers, not much to say here. They've gone up a point. They're still one of the best screens in the game, but I think we might see more Deathguard players taking Poxwalkers over Plaguebearers now. Personally, I'm still going to be taking my 30-man blob of Plaguebearers to form a screen for my 40-man blob of Chaos Cultists. So a quick word on the other demon units that have received points reductions. We've got Beasts of Nurgle down to 30 points, whereas they started the edition at 38 points. So 5 wounds with Disgusting and Resilient and a 5+ invulnerable save for only 30 points is crazy cheap. So they'd make an absolutely excellent screen, and I've seen people talk about them online where they take 3 units at 5 and use them as a screening unit. And then also Plague Drones are down to 36 points. Last chapter proved they went up to 40 points, which people were quite annoyed with. They're a really tough screening unit. They don't put out a lot of damage, but I think you're supposed to throw them across the board and tie up enemy units. Beasts of Nurgle are really interesting as well because they punish the opponent for falling back on a 4+. The unit which fell back suffers a mortal wound. So a great unit for tying up and punishing the opponent. And also they count as characters in terms of heroic intervention, so they can countercharge when your opponent charges your lines. They can be used to countercharge the opponent back. So I might test these guys out representing my Chaos Spawn as Beasts of Nurgle and get back to you guys about how they do. Really interestingly as well, you can have up to 9 of these guys in a squad, so you could fit 9, 18, 27 Beasts of Nurgle into your army. That's absolutely mental. So the Plagueburst Crawler, if you take it with entropy cannons, it's now 4 points cheaper. So we might see a few more sit back and shoot Plagueburst Crawlers. I did see a battle report recently actually where a Deathguard player took 3 Plagueburst Crawlers with entropy cannons. Entropy cannons are basically slightly weaker, long range melter guns. They don't get to roll 2d6 for the damage if they're in half range. So 30 points for 2 shots, 2 entropy cannon shots. It's cheaper than taking a twin link las cannon. So we might see more of that. So with Poxwalkers going down a point, we're getting to guard levels of cheap, so they're only 5 points a model. That's 100 Poxwalkers for 500 points, and I think the opponent's going to have a hard time taking out 100 Poxwalkers before they make contact with something, especially if you've got a Noxious Blightbringer to allow them to roll 2 dice for their advance move. And don't forget that Typhus has gone down to 155 points, so you can deep strike him in and he can make the Poxwalkers more resilient with his aura ability to increase their strength and toughness. And then also he can cast the psychic power, which increases the strength of and toughness of a unit by 1 as well, to boost one of the Poxwalker units. I think people underestimate Poxwalkers. They're not resilient in the obvious way that Plaguebearers are. They're resilient in non-obvious ways. So obviously they have a 5+ disgusting resilient save, but that morale immunity is also that they have is also huge, and it allows them to take a lot less casualties than, say, a large unit of Plaguebearers normally would. And also they can make up the losses they suffer in assault by converting the enemy into Poxwalkers, as long as it's an infantry unit that they're in assault with. If nothing else, I'd be really surprised if we don't see a lot of players taking 3 lots of 10 Poxwalkers just to sit on objectives and not die. So addressing the elephant in the room, sorry to end this video on a negative note, but Plague Marines, oh my god, they stayed the same points cost. So Games Workshop have seen Plague Marines and Intercessors as roughly equivalent for the whole of 8th edition, and they are roughly equivalent in terms of the amount of damage they can take. If you look at the stats for it, Intercessors are better at taking a high volume of attacks, whereas Plague Marines are better at taking high strength, high damage attacks. But now that Tactical Marines are down to 12 points and Chaos Space Marines are down to 11 points, there's now a 5-point difference between a Plague Marine and a Chaos Space Marine. And I just don't think Plague Marines have the damage output to justify that. I'm going to do another video on how I would fix Plague Marines. What I'm really hoping for is that we'll see a new data sheet for Plague Marines with some changes come out in our Psychic Awakening book. But as they stand now, I think they're just reduced to they're sort of one-trick ponies. You know, you can take a bunch of men of Rhino and do the Hyper Blight grenade trick, or gear them out for assault and then cast Blades of Putrefaction and pop a command point for Veterans of the Long War to make them into a sort of mortal wound producing unit. But at 16 points a model, we really can't honour the fluff. You know, Mortarion drowns the enemy in waves of Plague Marines. It just sees them as completely expendable. Like a fluffy Deathguard army is something like, 60 or 70 Plague Marines coming at the enemy. And you just can't do that when they're 16 points a model. I really believe the rumours that cult troops would go to 2 wounds a model, but sadly they haven't, and every other cult unit took a points drop apart from Plague Marines. So we'll see what Games Workshop do with them in Psychic Awakening. I'm cautiously optimistic. So guys, thanks for watching the first video on the channel. If you've liked this video, please consider hitting the subscribe button. I think for my next video, I will do an analysis of Plague Marines and what I would personally do to fix them if I was a Games Workshop games designer. And some of the tactics I've discussed in this video, I intend to try out in my games in the future. So I think I'll probably get back to you guys and do a unit by unit analysis for the units that have had a points decrease, and get back to you about how well they performed on the battlefield. Okay guys, signing out. Thanks for watching.